So when you're ready to print, you're going to want to cut or tear down your paper. Printmakers like to tear their paper because they're a big fan of that deckled edge. And when we tear our paper, we're able to reproduce, in a sense, that deckled edge. So depending on what type of paper you have, it'll often come in a larger sheet of 22 by 30. This is a sheet of 22 by 30 that I've already cut in half. My paper size is going to be 11 by 14. So I cut the 30 to 14 and then to 14 again. And now I'm going to cut the 22 right down the middle to 11. So in the print shop, we have what's called a tear bar. It's a long metal straight edge with one side that's slightly tapered. This is the side of the tear bar that we're going to use to tear our paper. So first of all, you're welcome to measure and make marks on your paper, but I just like to use the cutting mat so that I'm not putting a lot of paper or pencil lines on my paper. So I'm going to line up my edge of the paper with the cutting mat. And I can see on the cutting mat that there's a 1 inch here. Make sure that you're starting at the very edge of the cutting mat because that is where 0 is. If you start at the 1, your paper is going to be 1 inch too short. So this is very important to remember. Guaranteed somebody is going to do it, but hopefully it won't be you if you watch this video. So starting at the 0, I'm lining my paper up horizontally with this bottom edge. I'm going to find the 11, and I can see it's a little bit over 22, so I might scooch it a little bit to accommodate for that edge. So there's the 11. I'm lining my tear bar up with the 11 on both ends. And I'm going to apply a significant amount of pressure in the middle of the tear bar with my left hand. If you're left-handed, you would do this in the reverse. And then I'm going to pull up on the edge of my paper and, you know, not super quickly, but also not super slowly. I'm going to pull and rip along that edge. And there we go. Now I have a nice bit of a deckled edge there. And my paper is 11 by 14, and it's ready to soak in the water bath. If there's a lot of people besides you printing, I recommend turning your paper over and putting your initials lightly in the bottom corner so you know whose paper is whose. And if you're confused as to which side is which, look at that deckled edge. If it faces downwards, that means this is the front of the paper. It's going to be hard to see on the camera, but when paper is being made, it's often made on a screen. So you'll be able to tell the back side from the front side because you'll be able to see that geometric pattern of the screen, those crisscrossing lines on the back of the paper. Sometimes it's hard to tell depending on the paper, but that deckled edge will usually give you a clue. Now we're ready to put it in the water bath to soak for about 15 to 20 minutes. While your paper's soaking, you can ready your press bed. We're going to be using a series of blankets. So this one on top that's slightly rough is called the pusher. The one in the middle is nice and thick. It's called the cushion. And the one on the bottom is called the catcher. And it's called the sizing catcher. Some paper has sizing in it, and that's why this is called the catcher. So you're going to want to have the catcher on the bottom, the cushion in the middle, and then the pusher on top. It's nice to get your blankets sorted. And hopefully your press is slightly higher so that you can push the blankets through to the other side. Lay them out flat. and then you're ready to make some adjustments on your pressure. So I'm going to move the press bed to about the middle of the pressure roller. And now I'm going to slowly turn the pressure adjusters, probably about 2 at a time. And you're gonna want to adjust each side. So that was 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. We're gonna go another, you can feel that the pressure is increasing. Another 2, or another 1, I guess. And I'm gonna check to see where I am. There's little numbers on the pressure handles. So you can see there's a number on top, and then there's those little lines below. So if you see markings on the press that say 3 over, this would be 3 over 1, this is the position that you would put the pressure handles in. So this is 3 over 1 on this side. And I'm going to turn this side so that it's also 3 over 1. And there'll be some resistance, so it's stopping at 5. So I might adjust the other one to also be at 5 so that they're even to start with. And then we can adjust our pressure accordingly. To check my pressure, I'm gonna run my plexiglass plate through the press with a piece of newsprint to see what kind of an impression I get. So I'm just gonna place my plate down, the newsprint on top, roll the blankets out, make sure they're nice and flat. And then roll it through. You can feel some resistance, that's okay. Whoop. So it's quite a bit of pressure. You can see that the newsprint tore a little bit, so I might actually loosen it by 1 and try that out. And obviously we'll be making multiple prints, so your first print always tends to be light. So we do a couple proofs until we get the desired result, and that can be adjusting the way we're wiping or adjusting the pressure of the press. Okay, so our paper is soaking, the press is set up, and we're ready to start inking our plate. So make sure that you grab etching ink. Different types of ink are different depending on the process. Open the lid. And you're gonna wanna take ink from the top. If it's a little bit dried, that's okay. You can scoop out the dried bits. Put them in a paper towel and try to salvage what you can. Sometimes there's some good ink kind of rustled underneath. Don't gouge the ink because, as you can see, the ink dries on the surface. So if you gouge the ink, you're likely to get these deep crevices that dry, and that actually wastes ink. And you don't need a ton of ink. You can always refresh. So it's best to start with a little bit and add more as you go along. So what I'm doing now is called warming up the ink. I'm picking it up with my palette knife and then just dragging it across the surface. And this is loosening it up a bit so that it'll be easier to apply to my plate. If you're having trouble wiping, you can also apply a couple drops of burnt plate oil, and that will also loosen up your ink. All right, so when you've warmed it up, take a couple pieces of mat board, pick up some ink, and you're gonna wanna drag the ink across the entire surface of your plate, even if there's parts of your plate that don't have a drawing, because we're gonna want what's called an even plate tone. So if you only put ink in the areas of your plate where your drawing is, you're gonna get uneven plate tone. And there's lots of different ways that you can play with your plate tone. So right now I'm just picking up the ink, dragging it across the surface of my plate. Doesn't matter which direction you go in. When your plate is covered with ink, you're going to want to try to remove some with your mat board. So I've actually switched it around to another side, and I'm going to pick it up. And again, I'm recycling this excess ink because I can use it for another print. When you've removed all that you can with your mat board, you'll take a piece of tarlatan, which is like a starched cheesecloth. I like to start with a dirtier one because it's going to get really dirty. And what you do is you take it and you bunch it up so that there's a flat side and then a side where all the kind of loose ends are, like this. And then you're gonna hold it kind of like a softball so that the flat side is here and the bunched up side is held down by your hand. And then you're gonna move your hand around in a circular motion. I like to kind of flick my ink onto this piece of newsprint. The reason I have a piece of newsprint under here is to minimize my mess. And you're not going to want to focus on one part of the plate and, just avoid the rest. You're going to want to focus on all parts of the plate at the same time. I like to turn my plate around. And again, I'm kind of just like flicking my wrist and trying to push the ink off the plate onto my newsprint. And I am trying to be careful around the areas of my drawing because I don't want to take ink out of those lines. All right. So once you've got most of the ink removed with your really dirty tarlatan, you can move on to a semi-clean tarlatan. And I have some of this starched tarlatan that I've actually washed, so it's a little bit softer. This is a technique that I learned in an etching class that I took. But there are lots of different schools of thought in wiping. So you're welcome to watch other YouTube videos on wiping. They probably do it a different way, and try it out for yourself and figure out what works best for you. So I have this slightly softer, semi-dirty tarlatan that I'm going to use for the next step. And again, I'm just repeating that first process. I'm trying to be careful around the lines that I've scribed into the plate because I don't want to over wipe those lines. And the joy of Drypoint is that if we print this and we decide we want to add more material or add more lines, we can do that directly onto the plate. All right, so this is looking actually pretty good to me. I wouldn't wipe anymore. I do have another softer, even cleaner tarlatan, but I think I'm just gonna put that off to the side. At this point, I'm gonna take my gloves off. And please be sure to reuse your gloves. They're expensive and it's bad for the environment to use a new pair of gloves every time you wipe a plate. We have a lot of old phone books. The use of phone books is still strong in the world of printmaking. I like to cut them up into slightly smaller portions. And I'm going to use this to strategically wipe certain areas of my plate so I can get this outer area around my plate really clean. I'm being careful to not wipe any areas where I have line work. I think for the most part it's pretty good. The confusing thing can be where you see those marks on the back of the plate. So you might want to like clean off the back of your plate first before you go about wiping these like smaller areas. But to me, this looks pretty good. So the last part is you want to do your edges. So grab a clean rag, grab your plate, and just run it along the edges of your plate. This could be a good opportunity as well to clean off the back of your plate to make sure that those marks are indeed on the back of your plate and not on the front of your plate. All right, whew. So that looks pretty good to me. And now I'm gonna show you how to print it. So I've created these nice little grids to show you exactly where to place your print and to place your paper so that they'll land in the same place each time. So once I've finished inking my plate, I'm going to place it down in that smaller square, and then I'm going to go blot my paper and then place it down on top. So when blotting your paper, it's important to make sure that your hands are somewhat clean. I'm going to try to touch it the least amount as possible. Pick it up by the edges, let it drip as much as possible, lay it down on the towel, and you can use another towel, or sometimes I just fold it in half back on itself. I'm going to smooth it out with my hands. You can use the rolling pin if you'd like. And basically we just want to remove the shiny sheen of the paper. We still want it to be damp, just not sopping wet. All right, so once that sheen of water has been removed, you're ready to bring it back over to the press. All right, so bring your paper carefully over to the press. I like to hold it like this so that it doesn't buckle And you're gonna lay the paper down within that outer border of the grid and slowly let it drop. Then you're going to bring the blankets over the top, lay it down. Then we're going to run it through the press. Push the blankets back. Lift up your plate, and there you have it. So to me, I kind of want to go back in and work in this area a little bit because I put a lot of little lines in certain spots, but up there it looks a little like something's missing. So I might actually go back in and add some darker lines. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy with my image. It's nice and dark because those lines are fresh. I didn't over wipe. What you'll find with Drypoint is that the more that you print it, the lighter the lines are going to get. So for right now, these lines are nice and fresh. I'm happy with this, and I would continue to print my edition. One thing, this is actually what I would call my first proof. I used my good paper, but you're welcome to just use newsprint to proof with to make sure that all your lines look good. Or you can find scrap bits of paper in your paper, in the scrap paper drawer, so that you're not wasting your good paper on your first proofs. But I'm pretty happy with this. So once you've pulled your print, you're going to want to flatten it. So I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so now I'm in the paper flattening section. You'll want to remove these heavy pieces of wood. There's already some newsprint here that you can use. Just make sure that there's not a wrinkle in it, because that might actually affect your print. But you'll want to place your print between a blotter, which is this thicker white paper, 2 pieces of newsprint, and another blotter, and then that heavy piece of wood again. And this is so that as the print dries, it doesn't buckle and get wrinkly. So I'm going to place my print between 2 pieces of newsprint. I'm going to grab another blotter from underneath. As you can see, this is why I'm putting newsprint. There are some little inky bits. And if you're printing your edition, you can keep this open and then put all the layers in when you're ready to go. I'm gonna, just for demonstration purposes, put the final piece of wood back on. And so once you finish your edition, you can put this back on and then leave. I would come back in a day to 2 days to check on your prints and edition them. So now for the most important part, cleaning up. When you've finished printing your edition, you'll want to take the ink out of your plate so that you can store it. So you can take your plate over to the parts washer and clean it there, or you can use a little bit of mineral spirits. Put it on your plate and gently rub it with a cloth. Again, I'm gently rubbing it because I don't want to ruin any of the nice lines that I made in case I want to print it again. Just want to get all the ink off of it. All right. So then, if you have a lot of ink left and you haven't mixed anything into it, you can actually put it back in the container. So I didn't put anything in the sink, and I'm gonna place it back in, flatten the ink down so there's no gross gouges. Close it up, put it back, and put the tarlatans away. And then to clean up this little area over here, I can use the piece of newsprint that I've already been using. I have a razor that I can use to scoop up most of the ink, like that. Then I'm going to use just some plain old vegetable oil. And you can use and reuse the dirty rag. So I'm going to start with the dirty rag because this is a dirtier part of the job. And I'm just going to rub the vegetable oil into the oil-based ink. And because it's also oil, it'll loosen it up and get most of it off. I'm going to take it off of my spatula and also my razor. And then I'm going to want to degrease, so I'm going to take a little bit of a cleaner towel and some denatured alcohol. I'm going to put it into that spot where I just used the vegetable oil, clean it right up. There should be no ink left. And I'm going to do the same to my palette knives. A good thing to remember is to go around the edges as well, because ink gets stuck there, and the handles. So there's nothing worse than trying to mix up, say, a light color like a pink and getting a streak of black in it, and suddenly your pink is more like a gray. Once you've degreased the palette knives, you can fold this up, throw it away, and then put the rest of your materials away and you're good to go. Once you finish printing, don't forget to take the pressure off the press. Again, move the pressure adjusters at the same time. Or if you can't reach, do 2 on one side and then 2 on the other. And this is so that the roller doesn't go up at an angle on one side, because that could actually damage the press. So be careful when you're adjusting the pressure. All right, and once the pressure's been loosened, you can roll them up. It's also good to make sure that you clean up the press bed. You can use simple green or denatured alcohol. And now it's ready for the next person.